How can we understand life through geometrical transformations? That is today's question, and we'll answer it a little bit later. Welcome to the channel. My name is Thomas, and I do educational videos, so stay tuned if you want to learn something. And I do a lot of different subjects. I do videos. I've written a few books and a lot of different articles on things. I also do tutoring and consultations on a number of different subjects. But right now, we've been focused on the tree of life. And I focused on the tree of life to start with because I think it's kind of the common denominator between all the other subjects that I teach. If you learn tree of life, then it becomes much easier to learn all the other subjects because they all have a place where they fit. And it all fits together, and you can have it well organized in your head and easy to memorize, easy to remember. The Tree of Life is an elaborate mnemonic device. It looks like this, and you may also know it as the Hebrew Kabbalah. It's got a very long history, goes back to at least ancient Egypt. A lot of people have used it. Many of those people have probably been nefarious. I think it's important to learn it. The Tree of Life, like anything else, is just a technology, and it can be used for good or for evil, and or neutral probably. And it can also be used for self-defense. So when the evil people are attacking you with this thing, you can, if you learn how to use it, you can fight back. So that's another major reason why I teach Tree of Life. As you can see, the Tree of Life has 10 different circles on it, or spheres, that are numbered 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. There is a thing here, an implied circle that's called, or an implied circle or sphere that's called the abyss, and then a 0 above the tree, which makes a total of 12 different categories. And so these are, a lot of people think of this as our 12 faculties of consciousness, or 12 modes of consciousness, or 12 aspects of consciousness. And they pretty much, you can kind of sum them up as a beginner, just like this. The 10th sphere is basically our survival instinct. This is what we get when we're first born. We all life. So this is really wild animal consciousness. The law of the jungle, kill or be killed, the state of nature, and fight or flight response, and all the kind of the body functions that go along with that, along with the defilements and lusts of the body as well, which kind of work in the opposite direction of our survival. And so those need to be like tamped down for full life force. And as far as the life force is concerned, like in the Taoist, they talk about qi. Qi really has kind of like 3 different forms: Jing, Qi, and Shen. And this is really kind of corresponding to the Jing side of it. Okay, then when we go to the 9th sphere, this is our domestic consciousness. This is our what we're opening up in the first years of our lives. We're accessing this, and this is really our trance state, a mediumistic trance, where we're super highly receptive to our environment. And our environment is the domestic sphere, the house. Growing up in the home, the first few years of our lives, in our crib or playpen or whatever, and we are soaking up everything like a sponge, especially the behaviors of our caregivers. We're watching them, watching what they do, watching how they do it, and then practicing how they do it and imitating it until we get it right. And so this is like really a kind of almost a genetic transfer of habits and ways of life from one generation to the next through this process of heightened receptivity and then imitation and memorization. Unfortunately, the ninth sphere is blind. It doesn't know the difference between good and evil. It copies good as well as evil equally. And then the eighth sphere is kind of similar to the ninth sphere. Doesn't really register good and evil. It's pretty much blind, but it's instead of being in the domestic sphere, it's out in the public. So this is the public sphere. These are the institutions and the establishment. This is the expert opinion. This is what you get from your teachers and your preachers. They tell you what you're supposed to believe about things. This is the common sense or the common nonsense. They teach you, this is how we do things. This is what, this is why, this is what this is all about. And then they also, since all the resources are confined into the eighth sphere, they pretty much tell you, you can either believe this and have access to these resources, or if you don't believe it, you get shunned. And your life is a continual struggle then from there on. So most people eventually comply with this and go into the eighth sphere, and they do all kinds of things. The problem with the eighth sphere is that it's a trickster. So it's not really telling you the truth. It's telling you what they want you to believe. And they're usually manipulating you into believing what they want you to believe. And so we end up being torn here, where we kind of are being forced into believing in something, but our own experience tells us that it's not true, or that certain parts of it aren't true. So we're torn, and we end up having to kind of use our rational faculty to provide the Band-Aid there. With rationalization, we end up kind of telling ourselves that our own experience needs to be discounted because everybody else believes this one thing. Many psychological tests have been done, experiments have been done on this, where people have been shown to do all kinds of evil things to other people as long as that everybody else is doing it. When they think that this is what everybody else is doing, they will, abandon their own, moral compass and just fit in with what everybody else is doing, because they don't have enough faith in themselves, because they're like, I must be going crazy. I must be losing my mind. Maybe I'm wrong about this, even though, this is my own life and this is my own experience, but everybody else seems to be having a different experience. And the eighth sphere also does that because it has the loudspeaker or the microphone, and it can amplify its voice. So it makes it, even if it's only like a fringe movement, they make it seem like they're in the majority. And so they make it seem like, oh, this is what everybody believes. But they're just kind of gaslighting you and telling you that, when actually the majority of the people don't really believe that. So part of the great awakening that we're going through right now is really to discount this and to, call BS on it and say, well, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do for my resources, but, maybe God will provide. But I'm coming over here. And so the seventh sphere is for people who, sniffed into the eighth sphere, smelled a rat, and, said, hey, my own personal experience is valid here. What you guys are telling me, the emperor is not wearing clothes. So that's what I see. I'd call it as I see it. And, so I'm coming over here, I'm imagining something different. This is the real world, and this is the imaginary world. So the person at the seventh sphere has those similar faculties of consciousness here: imagination, inspiration, intuition, creative spark within us, and then also our pleasure principle, our ability to put things together into pleasing arrangements. And we use all of these different faculties here at the seventh sphere to provide alternatives to the eighth sphere. To say, look, this is faulty. Here's my song. Here's my poem. Here's my invention. Here's my, my game that I'm putting together, and it's going to cure some of the ills that are here with the eighth sphere. But also, if you want to develop this even further, then you use your inspiration as a push to get started on your climb up the tree. And the sixth sphere is your next step. And where the inspiration is the 1% the 1% of genius, the perspiration is the 99%. And so the 99% is the difficult path that you make as you climb into your spiritual self. And the sixth sphere is your first stop. The sixth sphere is our free will faculty, our ability to make decisions and to pay attention. And unfortunately, our attention is generally pointed in this direction. Toward 8, 9, and 10. This is our comfort zone. This is what we're used to. This is what we grew up with. This is all kind of old hat, whereas, this area up here is all unknown. So we focus most of our attention down here. But then the other aspect of our free will is our ability to make decisions. So we can make the decision to avert our attention. I'm not paying attention to this anymore. I'm ignoring this now, and I'm turning myself around, and I'm going to pay attention to our higher aspects. I'm going to pay attention, and I'm going to learn about all these higher aspects. This is a scary prospect because you're always, anytime you're looking into the unknown, that's a scary thing. You're changing from your comfort zone, attending to your comfort zone, to now attending to something that is much more unknown. But the unknown can become known if we pay enough attention. And so we start with the fifth sphere by paying attention to the fifth sphere. And the fifth sphere is really our sense of justice, otherwise known as karma. Karma is, as you sow, so shall you reap. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. What comes around goes around. And this is our karma, the enforcement of the natural law. And the enforcement of the natural law is based on violence, waste, and violation. So when you act violently, you get a return act that is also violent. And so you get violence done back to you. When you act wastefully, you get waste returned back to you. And so if you're paying attention here at the sixth sphere, you can pay attention to what the feedback is. And by doing that, you can gradually clean up your own behavior. So that's how you can work the fifth sphere to, as your friend, karma as your friend and teacher, to tutor you into having a better understanding of optimal behavior. The fourth sphere can do this also, where the fifth sphere is the enforcement of the natural law. The fourth sphere is the articulation of the natural law. So if you spend your time, mulling over different cosmologies or holy books or theories of everything, which are articulations of the natural law, and also doing investigations and experiments, and having more experiences, you begin to tune into how the world actually works. You'll never understand it completely, even though the natural law itself is permanent. Our interpretation of the natural law is always changing because we're always making new discoveries, finding out new things. And so we have to tweak that our interpretation of the natural law, but we can by studying comparative cosmology or cosmology, we can gradually hone in on a fairly stable understanding of how the world works. Fourth sphere also corresponds to our universals, the universal law, in addition to the universal love and the universal language. Our love, our ability to give, seeking nothing in return, and our ability to love our enemies. And then universal language are innate languages that we know just intuitively, that we can understand without having to have it taught to us. And then here we have the abyss, which is our psychic powers, which constitutes really two major things: psychic receptivity and then psychic heat. And psychic receptivity is our ability to recognize omens that happen, coincidences or synchronicities, deja vus, or other, highly anomalous things that happen, are communications to us to pay attention to that. So, we pay attention from here and we pay attention to these. And then in addition, we also need to be able to act upon them. So when we pay attention to the omen will alert us to an action that we need to take in order to kind of open up that omen. And that is the psychic heat that's required. Another aspect that requires courage, because you're putting yourself out there by making that act. You're doing something that you normally wouldn't do, that's out of character, and probably will make you stand out among a crowd, to stand up, to act upon this omen that happens. 3, 2, and 1 are divine faculties within. 3 being omnipotence, all-powerful. 2 is omniscience, all-knowing. And 1 is omnipresence, all-present, all at once, everywhere, eternally. We tap into the 3, omnipotence, through sound power and synchronized sound. We tap into the 2, the omniscience or wisdom, the ability to solve problems through coherent light. And then we tap into the 1 through utter stillness and being able to sink all the way down into our higher self at the center, at our deepest center or core. And this higher self that we have, the singularity at our deepest center, is the same as the center of everybody else. We're all the same and we're all unified at that point. So this is a unifying oneness. And then the 0 above the tree is a mystery and a nothingness. It has to do with what is actually not in the universe. The 0 is not in the universe. It is, there is no 0 in the universe, but there is a 0 in the creator. So it's part of the creator that is not in the universe. It's part of the universe that the creator reserves for itself. And so that is the beginner's version of the tree of life. Now, I've expanded that into a more intermediate version by fractalizing the tree. So fractalizing is, taking a fraction of the part. So take the whole tree. It's got 12 different components or 12 different aspects or faculties of consciousness, and apply it to each one of those 12 different faculties of consciousness. So you take the whole tree and you boil it down, miniaturize it, and you apply it to each sphere. Put a tree on the 9th sphere, put a tree on the 8th sphere, put a tree on the 7th sphere. So you divide the 9th sphere into 12 different categories. You divide the 8th sphere into 12 different categories, and so on, for a total of 144 categories or mini categories, or what I would call stages of life. And so that's what I've done. I've got That's what my model is, 144 fractal faculties or stages of life or history. And those stages are not chronological, they are dramatic stages. So, 12 different, or 144 different activities, 144 different dramas that we need to negotiate as we move through life. And I've compiled those into a list, just an annotated list, and would be happy to share that list with you. If you click the link in the description, then I'll send it out to you. The list will help you because especially if you watch my videos. As you watch my videos, I'll be rolling out one of each one of the 144 fractal faculties each day. And it can get kind of confusing or overwhelming if you have, you're learning about a different one each day. But if you have the whole list, then you can do a lot of cross-referencing and you can just understand it better. So just click the link in the description to get that free guide to the 144 fractal faculties. Now today we are looking at fractal faculty number 122. Can we understand life through geometrical transformations? And this turns out to be in the first sphere. So this is about unity, and this is about geometry, and this is about omnipresence, all present. And then we're talking about the ninth fractal. So the ninth sphere within the first sphere. And the ninth sphere has to do with repetition, heightened receptivity, imitation and learning, and the domestic consciousness. Okay, so that's where we're at, the ninth fractal of the first sphere. Number 122 is called Transform Memory, Transform Mission. Stage number 122 is about humoring our sacred mission, as the universe itself, upon close examination, turns out to be an illusion. Just a next level virtual reality game, blinking on and off quadrillions of times per second. Memory can also be put into perspective, as it turns out that items can be recalled through the use of other faculties, such as clairvoyance and access to the Akashic records. Transform memory, transform mission. Graduation is the final step in a galaxy game, the final transformation. The object of the game is to overcome all the cabal's best technology and manipulation to regain our identity, to gather huge amounts of sensory and emotional experiences into our memory, and thereby develop wisdom. The challenge is we begin with no memory. So we must transform our memory to fill ourselves in on what we forgot. So we can pull the experiences of all of our incarnations into this single final incarnation and then evolve back into the higher self and leave the game. No memory needed, as we can access the info through clairvoyance. No need to store memories in space if we can store in time. Or through the Akashic records, which is stored entirely outside of space-time. We never forget. Everything is recorded in the Akashic records, stored outside of time and space, at our deepest center, that we share with everyone else. So we can see their recordings too. No mission needed anymore, as we are always tuned in and automatically adapt moment to moment. The transformations from the tetrahedron to the star tetrahedron, to the octahedron, to the vector equilibrium, or cube octahedron, to the icosahedron, to the dodecahedron, to the cube. which is back to the tetrahedron again. As we move through these transformations, we experience the different trance states. So our consciousness is dependent upon shape. These transformations blink on and off every unit of time, 6.576 quadrillion per second. Thought-free waking trance, further and further into our deepest center as we become more calm and therefore transparent. The geometry transcends time and space, unlimited potential, unlimited knowing, and unlimited presence. In space, infiniteness, and time, eternalness of the subjective realm. Our geometry is our inner self. It is perfect. It is quantum. Different shapes are different aspects of our consciousness. Geometrical transformations, consciousness of being conscious, insperience, true inner self, and become effortlessly detached, like a mummy. A higher dimension, the Akashic records. Okay, that is the 9th fractal of the first sphere, transform memory, transform mission. And, we'll have more to say about that as the time goes along. But thank you for sticking around for the whole video. And, that's kind of how the videos work. The first 2/3 to 3/4 of the video is going to be just the basic introduction to the tree of life. And that can seem repetitive if you watch many of these videos, but it's probably good because you need the repetition. We all need the repetition. This stuff is a little bit difficult to remember, but if you hear it over and over again, it begins to sink in. That's the way that you eventually learn the tree, is through memorization and then application. But you've got to get a hook in first. That's the memorization. You've got to get it memorized to a certain level so that it's somewhat like old hat. You have to have your I wouldn't call it body memory exactly, but your rote memory. It has to be old hat to a certain level, and then you can really use the tree for your own experiences. It's kind of like I'm a jazz historian. That's what I have my degree in, and or it's what I wrote my PhD on. And for the jazz musicians, many of them, for example, in like the 1950s, were heavily influenced by the alto sax player Charlie Parker, and they tried to imitate Charlie Parker, but the ones who were really good, they imitated Charlie Parker, but eventually they got their own sound. They got Charlie Parker down, but then eventually they developed their own sound. And that's kind of how the tree works. You have to kind of memorize it to a certain point. And then once you have it to a certain point, then you can make it your own. But before that, you're at the level of really just memorizing and kind of imitating. But then once you can get it to that level, then you take the next step and make it your own. So that is my recommendation for learning Tree of Life. Another big help would be to just make the diagram yourself. Draw a picture of the diagram, whether you want to use the straight edge in the compass or whether you just want to do it freehand. You don't need all the colors, just the numbers and the shape. And that will also get it into your mind. That's how sacred geometry works. You you learn 10 times more if you do the diagrams. So I encourage that as well. Again, click the link in the description if you'd like my list of the guide to the 144 fractal faculties. You can hit the like button, share the video with others, subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for future videos starting tomorrow on the same topic. And my Cash App and Venmo are in there if you'd like to give a donation. But mainly just have a nice day and stay tuned for future videos from me, not only on the Tree of Life, but a bunch of different subjects. We're going to have a great year. Okay, thanks. Bye.